This time I'd like to bring the drainage.
Morning, it's 8:30, so I'd like to call the Monday, January 8th, 2024 Drainage Board meeting to order. The first order of business is the election of officers. Do I have any nominations?
I'll make a motion. We elect Thomas Slarp for our chairman.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll make a motion that we nominate Randy Mathis as our board vice president. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
I'll turn the meeting over to you.
You do anything for him?
He's fixed by statute. There's nothing.
I gotta remember that for next year.
Do we do a secretary also?
Yes.
Do we do secretary also?
Don't she, Ben? I think Savannah is just automatically, right?
I think so. I don't.
We
Yeah, I don't
always,
think-
we always did before.
Okay, well, if you'd like to.
I guess I would nominate Savannah to be our secretary.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations, Savannah.
First,
All right, Mr. President, all you.
officially,
Approval of the December 4th minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Motion been made, and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Surveyor report.
First up, we have payment to contractors. You see the list in front of you. Anybody have any questions in regards to the payments to the contractors? There are a total of 6 of them. Pemberton LLC, Pemberton LLC, Terry Smith, and U.S. Geological Survey.
Make a motion to approve the payment to contractors.
I'll second.
Motion been made, stated to accept exhibit A, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Change assessments, there's a few more change of assessments, thanks to Dee's help. All these in Lau Associates, all the changes, mostly all the change assessments have been entered into the system. So we're ready to roll there. Any comments on the assessment changes?
No.
I don't,
I'll make a motion that we approve the change of assessments as presented here.
Second.
motion been made, and seconded to accept the change of assessments, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Nespajani ditch reconstruction.
Jared, are you giving an update on that? John, somebody giving an update on that or are we talking about the permit?
We had a home emergency. Oh, but I could, so I didn't know where we were at on this. Submitted, I assume. Right, the water main permit was submitted, but I don't show the board the plans yet.
Okay,
Then the other one was the directional board, the utility.
the crossings.
Yeah, that one was fine.
Okay, does this board approves those? Or do we need an explanation of that? I can go through that if you want.
Go through the water main one, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, absolutely. Jared Huss, Lawson Fisher Associates, 525 West Washington Avenue. Nesbajani ditch, obviously, there were 2 permits that were submitted for utility related items related to the ditch itself. And both of those, the one was a crossing permit, so that's both the future crossings of water main of the proposed ditch, also that goes under the existing ditch at this time as well as part of that construction. So that's part of the water main you guys should have. If you don't have the permit in front of you, I think John can get that to you along with information. There should be plan sheets, DLZ, put those together on behalf because they are in charge of the water main design on the project. So first one, the second one will be then the water main location within the legal drain easement. And so that one is pertinent to, as we've discussed, we reduced the legal drain easement to 35 foot in previous meetings, and then would like to establish the water main on the outside 10-foot edge of the 35-foot easement. That allows for coordination of all the various utilities that are stacking on the property. So I think there was also some graphics that were provided in that permit. If you have that in front of you, I don't know, John, if that was in the packet or not, wasn't able to. Okay. So I can talk through either one of those to give some context to what we're doing, but well, again, there are two permits, so probably stick with the crossing permit first and see if there's any questions specific to that.
That's the one we looked at, they were in correctional bore underneath. First, the location of the new, the position of where the new relocated ditch is going. And then they're gonna go underneath the existing ditch. And then once that one is okay, we'll just fill that one in.
This is the water main you're talking about.
Correct. So statutorily, I know DLZ met the statutory requirements. I think it was 5 feet below the ditch line. So they have met that statutory requirement in their design for the ditch crossings. So just be aware that they met all those requirements as well related to the ditch crossings.
The water main, what direction is it coming from? Obviously, it's gonna end on the GM site, but where's it coming from? Or-
Yeah, so Randy, that's coming from the Energy Center plant that's there on Edison and Walnut, that northwest quadrant. And so it'll come down Walnut, it'll then cross, go along the north side of Early Road, cross Early Road, and then come down Spruce. And when that comes down Spruce, that'll be coming along the ditch easement. That's part of our
So it's
request.
coming parallel
Correct,
to the new relocated north-south section.
correct.
That's what Johnny did.
Yes, yep. And then it's not, once it crosses Fillmore, at about 400 feet south of Fillmore, it will need to cross west underneath the proposed ditch. And then we'll continue west underneath the existing ditch to get into the site.
So it'll be on the east side of the new relocated north-south section?
So it'll be on the east side from Spruce or from Early to 400 foot south of Fillmore. And then it would cross west
Mhm.
underneath the proposed and the existing to get into the,
So it'd be between the ditch and the R and L freight company yard?
correct. Yep, you've got it. And then, once it crosses into the GM site, that's one piece of it. And then, from that point on the east side or the west side of the ditch, we would ask that the water main continue south along the west side of the ditch and cross under State Road 2.
Oh, going south.
Correct. So those effectively are the collection of permits that were submitted by DLZ on behalf of the project, both to be located within the legal drain easement, but also cross the ditches, the proposed and existing.
Being discussed here today because of the permitting process, because it's in the right of way of the drainage.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, the two,
easement.
exactly. So the drainage board obviously needing to approve both the crossing of the legal drain and also the proximity of the water main within the legal drain easement.
But we're not expected to do that today, I don't think.
Pardon me?
I don't think they're asking for that today.
I thought the original intent was, and I think that's why the permits were submitted. And like I said, that's why I was unsure if the permits were in the packet or not, in that process. So
This is what the,
So this is just an information today.
That's my understanding.
part of the permitting process that we're kind of trying to work on and setting up is when these permits come in, you guys on the board will be notified via email. Then I'll have the plans and all that, but we aren't at that point yet. Cause I'm still writing some of these things and trying to get them online and the IT person that's been helping me, she's been out for quite a while, so we're still working out some bugs on this permitting program.
When did you want the actual permits and construction of the water mains under the new ditch to
So
take
that,
place.
we did intend for that to be addressed today, but with, obviously there's some process being worked out with the ditch permit process of those various activities. So DLZ did get that all that information. John's got that. I think he did talk to Tom about that, but obviously that information is not in your packet. So desirably that would have been today. DLZ it does have a portion of those permits or those projects out for bid currently. We feel comfortable with the information that's in it. We think it's a pretty defensible permit, but if we need to delay it because you guys don't have that in your packet today, we understand, but desirably we would have done that today.
I just want to make sure we've got everything right procedurally. For the reconstruction of the ditch, we need for approval to make sure everything's set for the actual ditch. Do we do the public notices and actually have the?
Well, that's, so that reconstruction process,
Mhm.
and Phil and I have been working on that too. I know Marcel will work with you on that as well, but we've got the surveyor's report related to the reconstruction of the Nesbit-Johnny. John had started a nice draft of that. We're reviewing that internally at Lawson Fisher, and I think Phil is reviewing that as well. So we'll collectively come back, address any of those comments, and that will then be a process, I believe, starting in February on that whole process of reconstructing the actual ditch. So that's one of the steps procedurally, statutorily, that I know the Drainage Board, Marcel, that you'll be leading them through. But then these are different. They're specific to crossing the ditch and being within the proposed legal drain easement.
There's a longer public notice requirement for a ditch reconstruction, so it's
Correct.
at least 30 days.
Mhm.
So if you want to be on the agenda for next month, if you're planning to do it in February, I mean, you make sure that it's a 30-day to 40-day window, so there's only a 10-day window in there. So you need to make sure we hit that properly. And then if you guys want a water main that's going to cross that ditch, we need to approve the ditch before we can approve an encroachment on the easement. Because otherwise, we don't have the approved ditch. So we can give you the approval to cross it as it currently is, but that's not gonna do you guys any good long term because we're moving the ditch. So I just want to make sure the ducks are in a row. I want to make sure you guys understand we need to approve the ditch, the reconstruction. Hopefully we can get everything published so that happens in February. And then after that's approved, which probably could also happen at the same meeting, assuming it happens after, then you can ask requests for the water main. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Thank you, Commissioner.
We're only 3 weeks away from our February meeting, so
Oh, so it'll be March then. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. Like, we need to make sure we're hitting the timelines here. I mean, holding up and not. We guys got to get everything to Johnny, make sure everything gets to the board, and we're gonna make sure we're hitting those notice windows for the public requirements for the reconstruction.
Now, several months back, I asked the board, I mean, we're getting just, permits for utility pole being placed in the, in the easement. And, those are the ones that I asked the board, do you want to be bothered with those, or can I just sign off on those? And, and then you guys said that, you didn't want to really be bothered with like a telephone pole being put in a ditch bank. So, and going through this permit process, we've never talked about any kind of public hearing on them. I mean, they're just utility crossings and things like that.
You don't need a public hearing for the utility crossing.
Right.
You need a public hearing for the ditch reconstruction.
Right.
So that's what I'm talking
Okay.
about. But you can't approve a utility pole to go into an easement that does not yet exist. So once again, we need to have the ditch reconstruction approved before we do the easements across the ditch. Otherwise, we don't technically have the ditch yet for you to get the easements on.
Marcel, one of the things that just, and don't disagree with you, one of the things we looked at this was a permit that was related to the existing ditch. The proposed ditch doesn't exist, so we weren't sure that a permit even really existed or was required for the proposed ditch because it doesn't exist. So to us, that was a informational based process. We were just logging the fact that that was going to be under it. We were confirming that it would be 5 foot under the proposed ditch, even though, to your point, no legal drain nor anything exists today. So really, permit would be to cross the existing ditch, be informational for you that we did address the proposed conditions appropriately per the Drainage Board statutory requests and design requests. So I guess from our perspective, that those didn't need to be in sequence, but that's up to you. We can do however the Drainage Board would request. But in our minds, we were just informationally providing the fact that we addressed the design appropriately on the proposed ditch because it does not exist and that we needed a permit to cross the existing. So that's up to you guys on how you'd like us to proceed, but that was our thought process.
I think it's cleaner if you do it where we approve the ditch and then you get the easements. You're right, it doesn't exist right now, so you could technically build it, but then these guys are gonna have to approve it and you're gonna we're gonna have to make sure that the easements are in place when it's approved. So, I mean, cart horse, but like I said, if assuming we get everything in and it's all set for the March meeting now, because we don't have the notice requirements for February, I'm assuming we can do them both in March, given the stage we're at in winter. I don't think that's gonna hold up construction. Hopefully not.
Yeah, I think, and I'll defer to DLZ on construction timing, but I believe that we'll still be able to perform at least the upstream to downstream construction portion. Brian?
So they could probably just have the contractor look at the tell them that.
Okay. So we'll just make sure we get our ducks in a row for the first week of March. No?
Okay. Well, that would be our request then, that the existing ditch permit, crossing permit be approved. I know, John, you've got that and you had gone over that with Thomas, Mr. Schlerb, so didn't know. If there are questions related to that. Also, just for confirmation's sake, if we do approve that permit obviously also shows the water main crossing of the proposed ditch at the 5-foot mark. So again, meeting the design requirements of the drainage board. So when we have to come back and address that, it's merely just a verbal understanding or a document understanding that exists as a condition.
I've
That
seen the
sounds fine
plans
to
of the
me.
crossing of the existing ditch and it looks like exactly what we've always approved and looked for in the past. So, you know, I don't see a problem with that.
This would be on the north side of State Road too?
Yeah.
Mhm.
The
That-
water main would run east-west along too?
Runs east-west, kind of in the middle,
Yeah.
more of the middle of the lot, the development.
Yeah, Randy, the east-west component of the water main would run as we go north-south. So as we're coming south along the east side of the ditch, the proposed ditch line, we would cross Fillmore approximately 400 foot south of that. That's where the water main would then turn west and cross both the proposed and existing ditch alignments
Into the GM site.
into the GM site. Yeah. And then there would be another, and separate of that, but connected, would be then another stretch of pipe that would go from that point at the west side of the ditch, where we talked about 400 foot south of Fillmore, and we continue south to 2. But we can address that permit separately if you would like. Focus on the crossing permit at this point.
Yeah, well, I'd make a motion, we approve the crossing of the underneath the existing Nespajani ditch, you know, based on the plans that I've seen. And I assume, John, you approve it, and Bobby, you're okay with it?
Yeah, I'm fine.
All right, so that, I make a motion to approve that permit to cross. If you're not comfortable with that, that's fine. I've seen
Well,
the
I mean, it
plans.
just-
You haven't seen the plan, so.
Yeah, we
well,
haven't
that's
seen the
the
plans. I thought we'd have had a plan presented here today.
And that's my fault.
Right.
When that meeting you and I were at, they did have the plans for that and we did pass those around and talked about them. So I kind of thought. And then, yeah,
I remember the meeting. I guess I'm drawing a
I
blank
don't-
about the.
I
water.
don't believe everybody was there though,
no,
John.
they weren't.
Not everybody was there.
No, and like I
And
said,
saw those
I
plans.
should have sent those out. I should have
You know,
sent
those
those.
should be in front of this board before we start doing things like that. You know, in my opinion, we're doing stuff on the fly and I don't like it. You know, as you can tell by last month's meeting.
Do you have a copy of the plans with you?
Did not bring them. No, I assumed they were going to be.
Sweet.
We-
How about we-
DLZ did bring their plans for the ditch crossing, so they
Yeah,
can
let's
show you
get
that.
those and let's see if we can get the board comfortable.
I guess I question how much water are they gonna use? Why do they need a water main? Why don't they just put a well in the ground?
Well, we don't, wait, so
That's
we
nice.
statutorily, we do not want, or from a water supply standpoint, we don't want every supplier or industry coming in and placing wells. We want to control that through the use of water treatment plants.
Yeah. That's roughly 400 feet south of existing
That
film.
where
water.
200 I think goes east and west. Even better.
Yeah,
I don't have a larger.
okay.
Yeah. Okay.
At what point will it go south and cross under State Road 2?
So it's similar to where it's crossing the ditches, it currently where you're being shown, that point at which it finally crosses the ditch and gets to the west bank
Of the existing ditch.
of the proposed ditch. So once it,
Now, this drawing I was told is the existing ditch.
Yes.
well, correct, yes. So the crossing is the existing ditch. What I'm referring to is the water main going south. That will happen within the proposed ditch legal drain easements. That's not going to follow the existing ditch.
Okay, so this just gets it into the battery plant,
That's correct. Correct.
and not south from there.
Yeah, there'll be a separate contract that DLZ has under design currently that will show that water main to going south along the west edge of the proposed ditch.
Okay.
I made a
So
motion
have
to
we
not-
made a motion
Yeah.
and seconded,
Didn't get that.
We did.
did not get, okay, I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Hi.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Randy, sorry for not getting those plans out to you, I guess.
So we'll come back on the second one then related to the water main within the legal drain easement and better show that so you guys have all that information.
The reconstruction of the Nesvajani ditch. I mean, I think I have a pretty good picture in my mind how it's gonna be routed, but as a drainage board, I don't recall that
Oh yeah, you've seen it multiple
we've
times.
seen it
Oh,
multiple
yeah,
times,
correct.
but I don't believe that we've approved it.
No.
You approved the process and procedure to start the design of the ditch. Intent was to keep you updated. The formal process of approving the final reconstruction of that ditch is what Marcel was referring to. And that has tied to it the completion of the surveyor's report. You wanted a specific level of design before you get to that point so that you're assured that the ditch is going to work in terms of as designed. So we have all of those pieces kind of meeting up at this statutory requirement piece, which Marcel was referring to related to the reconstruction of the surveyor's report. So all that's kind of culminating to finalize that aspect.
But these board members should get that information prior to a Monday morning meeting, though.
Right, we're not asking for approval of that, just
Yeah,
to be clear,
Hey,
that,
I get that, Jared, but once that process is going to happen, they should get those drawings in that surveyor's report at least a week in advance so they can go through that.
yeah, I would agree with
Well,
you.
They'll have it 30 to 40 days before the March meeting pursuant to the statute. Otherwise, it'll get pushed back to April.
Correct.
So, but no, I mean, Jared, what's happened so far is correct. I mean, the preliminary plan's been submitted. You guys have reviewed it. You said, okay, the surveyor's getting all the information saying that it's, the water flows are going to be okay. It's cost effective, et cetera, et cetera. And then all of that stuff is going to be packaged and submitted to you for final approval of the drain reconstruction. So we're following the process correctly. I'm assuming you guys will have everything ready to go in time to put out notice for that March meeting, and then And then we should be okay for DLZ to get their final approval.
Yep, and I would even offer that we need to, we can have a review meeting, make sure that everybody's clear. However you guys would like to proceed to make sure that you've got all the information you need and feel comfortable. We can make that happen.
That would include the proposal for the design of the new ditch.
Excuse me, Thomas, just make sure I understood you. Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Yes. That is correct. Yes.
Correct.
I heard you.
Any other questions?
Good job.
Thank you.
Priority list.
Oh, no, Phil.
Oh, I'm sorry. I rechecked that. Philip Ditch Monitoring.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Matt Mearsman, and I serve as the Director of the St. Joseph River Basin Commission. St. Joe County is one of 6 counties that's a member of the commission, and by statute, the surveyor, as well as county commissioner, are members of the commission. A little context for what we're here to talk about today. Gosh, it's probably been 2-3 years ago. The county was looking at the flooding issues in the Jewel Woods neighborhood, where Phillips Ditch comes in. And David McCormick from McCormick Engineering did a study on detention, whether or not we could reduce those flows that were flooding Jewel Wood. And thanks, Frank. And one of the things that, and Dave's here today, fortunately, so he can correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things Dave said was with the absence of actual flow information in the ditch, the detention that we were designing was kind of, just based on some theoretical numbers, and those numbers came back pretty high. It was going to be pretty expensive to try and build some detention. And what Dave said was, hey, if we had some actual numbers about how much water is moving through there, we might be able to redesign and make it a little more cost effective. So the River Basin Commission kind of tried to step in to support that, and we've established some gauging sites out there. We've bought some instruments, and I've brought Todd Feenstra here with me today, the consultant who's installed them and who can tell us a little bit more about what we found so far. But the idea is we would leave these in place long enough to capture some really big flows, and that would help us redesign, if necessary, some kind of detention to protect Jewel Woods neighborhood. So with that, Todd, if you want to talk about what we found, we had them out there for maybe a year or so. And you've got a point. Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Todd Feenstra. I'm a hydrogeologic consultant. I'm the president of Tritium Incorporated. We do a lot of this type of monitoring on both surface water and groundwater systems. So I'm going to walk you through really quickly what we found. You can see there's 6 stations up here. They're not ordered consecutively. And so when we talk about them, we got to keep kind of the map in mind where we're at. But essentially the ditch flows from the southeast up to the northwest. In station 3 would be the uppermost one, and station 5 is actually the downstream most one. So we put in what's called.
Can you tell them where station 3 is?
Station 3 is, if you look directly to the right of where Google Earth is, I don't have a pointer. It's the furthest. There we go. There, station 3 is all the way down south here. Station 4 is just a crossing, a tributary. Up here is station 2, station 1. And then 5 is here. We added one at the Ireland Road crossing, just for completeness sake.
So station 3 is at Miami Road, where the ditch goes underneath Miami Road. Miss
Correct.
Schaefer's old farm. Then, yeah, I'm sorry.
Station 2 would be on Kern Road. In station 1 is at US 20, right behind the Walmart, right alongside there. And then you get up into the Ireland crossing and then up into the industrial area. So to measure the flows out there, we did a couple things. One, we used Hawk telemetry systems. So there's 3 of them installed out there. It's a sound-based or a sonar-based a sound-based telemetry system. It's connected to the web and it's available online. And so at station 1, this would be right behind Walmart, right along US 20. We're on top of a culvert right there. And you can see that was installed in March of last year. So it's still a little less than a year that one went in. We also did on station 2 over here on Kern Road. There's a concrete box culvert. It looks good in this picture, but the reason for the one in the lower left is you can see that we've got some interference from some vegetation in the summertime.
That's
So
the Red's gas station, Kern and 31.
But the big deal here was that you'll see in the graph when I'm going to show up that the construction of this, just the way that it lays out with the vegetation and the rocks and the stream bed, that those interfere with the sound when the water levels get too low. And then on station 3, a young man working for me by the name of Seth Miller is the one in the lower left. We couldn't install this gauge until June, actually, because there was 3 feet of standing water over the top of the culvert. It took that long for that to drain down. So station 3, you recall, is way at the upstream end on Miami Street. And so this one is a really unique one. It tends to flood and stay flooded, even though the stuff downstream isn't flooded. And so it tends to impound and pile up for some reason back there. So that one's been a really interesting one to work on as well. So the other thing that we did while we were out there is the telemetry systems give us the water level measurement, but we need to know what the flow rate is in the stream. And so we use a flow tracker instrument, another acoustic-based instrument, and we measure what the actual discharge is in the stream using the USGS protocols for stream gauging. And so we went out and made 6 trips out, and we did what we call a gain loss survey. We started at the upstream end and took these measurements at every single site. So 6 sites every trip out, and we made 6 trips out. And we'll look at that a little bit later. But at the same time, on the upper right, we also measured the other component of the ditches, and that is what is the ditch bed composed of. So if it's sands and gravels, we could be losing water through the bottom of the stream bed. In this case, at every site that we measured it, the connectivity was essentially 0. There was no water that was being lost through the bed of this ditch. It's all 100% overland flow. So when we did that and put those in, the water levels weren't changing inside of our meter at all the entire time that it was installed. So connectivity is 0 on those. So everything, like I said, is overland flow. In this is what the numbers look like. So these are the stages of the stream, and you can see the variability. You can see very, very clearly when we have major flood events. So this one is at station 1, right by Walmart on the US 20 there. And we got, obviously it was a very, very low year. During June this year, you can clearly see when it dropped down, where it flat lines here, right here is where the ditch is actually dry. And so that's why it's a flat line and it's not jumping much. It's just the sound waves are bouncing off the stream bed, itself. There's no water in there. And then you can see the water levels just come up a bit. Matt has additional copies of this that he can share with you. I brought some of those so you'll have printed. It's also available online. So at station 2 at Kern Road, this is the one with the concrete box culvert where we had the rocks and we had the vegetation. You can see extremely noisy here. Very responsive, but a lot of noise in this data. These water levels are moving around a lot. A small range, but they're moving around a lot. And it's dry for most of the year. There's almost no water in that. And so we're bouncing off of rocks and vegetation. Water levels are extremely low. And then on Miami Street, this is station 3, the most upstream end. You can see flat line right down to the rocks early. when we installed that. And then it's been climbing ever since. And this is what we observed visually at the beginning of last year. And you can see it's coming up. And we actually had to install the telemetry system an additional 4 feet above the top of the culvert just to keep it out of the water. So we're expecting to see very, very high water levels again this spring. So we'll see what that looks like. But these have been in, they've not even been in for a full year yet. So I talked about the gain loss surveys. We went out 6 times. The reason there's only 5 surveys is on one of the times in June, every single site was dry. There was no water in any of them. So it was all zeros. Those are the dates. We spread those out over the year and we try to get different water stages so that we can relate the stage of the river to the discharge. And once we have the equation to do that, we can use the telemetry systems and we can tell you what the discharge is at any point in time as it's being monitored there. So again, just a refresher on the layout as we looked at that. And here's the gain loss graph. And so discharge is on the left axis and the distance downstream is on the bottom. And so you're looking at how water increases as you go downstream, but notice at station 1 right by Walmart, it's always at its highest, and then it drops very dramatically. In fact, between Ireland Road and the industrial area, it goes to 0. It disappears entirely. So it's a mixture of underground flow and a wetland area and a bunch of just getting rid of the water actually down to the St. Joseph River, I believe. So, and the value of this also, as you can see during the different times of the year, what the flow is and how they relate to each other throughout the year. And then this is just an example of what can be provided. We don't have enough measurements yet to do this out at the ditch. We need about 2 more. But this is an example of a staged discharge. And so using this, then those toll talk telemetry systems can be used to tell you what the discharge is every 15 minutes throughout the year at the gauge. So we need 2 more gain loss surveys to complete our staged discharge curve. We had that in the budget, but we have not been able to have 5 consecutive gain loss surveys where every river crossing has had water in it. We've had issues with some being dry or all of them being dry. And so we should complete that. Like I said, the gauges went in March of last year. By March of this year, we will have the stage discharge completed within the first year of the gauges being in place. And then the last slide I have is just the visual. I told you when we put our meter in the river and we tested the stream bed in the ditch, every location is flat. And you can very, very clearly see when we put the instrument in, we pump the water out right here, it just stayed. It never recovered the entire time that the meter was installed in the stream. So we have this information compiled as well, that the connectivity up and down the entire ditch is 0. So with that, if there's any questions, I can back up to anything. Otherwise, there's a very quick overview.
Where did you say that backed up along that Phillips? Where did you say that backed up at? Was always
It's at Miami
at
Street.
Miami?
Yeah. And it's quite remarkable because the culvert on both sides, it's a larger culvert, 4 feet or so, I believe. On one side, there'll be standing water 3 feet above the culvert, but on the downstream end, the culvert's exposed and it's not nearly as flooded. And yet during the dry months, when the water levels were down, we were able to look actually all the way through the culvert to see that it wasn't blocked. I don't have a good explanation for that yet. But we've also been doing this for a little bit less than a year. There's quite a bit to figure out there.
John, would you know why that is?
Yeah, there's at Miami Road, I think the culvert's put in backwards. That's why one side you see air through it and the other side it's underwater. This situation, there's on the O'Shafer farm, as you go downstream, there's a head wall and that open ditch goes into 2 12-inch tile. And I'm not sure that they're set up above each other like this. And I'm not sure that bottom one works very well. I've had it routed out a bunch by Alsop. And it's just, they're old tile.
Yeah.
And so the reason that backs up is that the water can't get into those two tile.
Well, it's interesting because the manhole covers that we observed that are out there are elevated.
Mhm.
And so clearly it's been an issue for a while.
So just so you, I mean, our goal was to try and help see if we could, save the county some money in understanding this thing better. And I don't know whether Dave's got any thoughts, but just going out there with John, not to mention the data that we're finding, this has been an incredibly, interesting and a learning experience for understanding these ditches. And I know we've got some things like Jude Creek in the county and stuff that gain water in certain places and then they lose water in other places. And it's the most bizarre thing, but seeing how much water is coming underneath the bypass and then you go downstream, not even a mile, and there's nothing. I mean, it's just completely going into the ground. So I could see why with a stream like this, having actual data is gonna help improve whatever we might design to try to mitigate the flooding in the Jewel Woods neighborhood. So, Dave, as far as you can tell, are we on the right track and getting after the information that you said might help you? And yeah, please.
Just so you guys know,
John, where does that, at Miami, where is that at? I mean, I can go to Kern Road and see it. Where is,
as you know where Roosevelt is?
yeah,
The church goes south of it, the old Connie Schaefer farm. Remember that, the farm there on the right?
yes,
It crosses right south of her, just south of her house.
okay.
And, part of the reason this is important too is this is the Phillips ditch, so we did go through Jewelwood, but then also this is the upper end of the Bowman Creek going through South Bend, and that big rain we had, Bowman Creek also flooded, and there are some issues too, so that's another reason why this is important too, because this also is the headwaters of Bowman Creek in South Bend.
So when it crosses under the road, correct me here, is that a highway issue or is that a drainage board issue? If it's within the right of way under the road?
I guess it depends what the issue is.
Well, it seems like it's backing up.
Well, no, that's at Miami.
That's at Miami. but
Yeah,
under the
underneath,
road, though,
going
correct?
underneath 20, it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but going underneath 20, there hasn't been in this year's study any problems.
No, and when we say it's backing up, Bobby, it's kind of interesting. It appears like it's backing up, but like you said, there's no flow on either side. So I guess what I say, if it's backing up, I don't think it's because of the culvert or anything at the road. It's just downstream of that where it enters into a tile that potentially could be a impediment.
Then that
that
would
would be
be,
drainage board.
then that's ours then.
That's right.
That one is. And I've been looking at that issue for 35 years, Bobby.
This tile then would be west of Miami Road?
Yes, exactly.
And is that an existing tile or has that been, I mean, is it?
There's two tile there. They go, and there used to be an old hog farm there, and there's a big concrete box where the two tile come in and then they go out, two more tile come out the other side. That used to be an old hog farm, and their hogs would fall in there all the time and plug the tile. Yeah, so also I had to go in and get those hogs out of the pipes, but then it goes down underneath Roosevelt Road, goes through Miami Meadows, and right behind the cemetery there, South Lawn Cemetery. It opens back up to an open ditch. The problem with those two tile is in some spots they're 25, 30 feet deep. They're on the old Schaefer farm. So there's just, I mean, right now, all we can do is maintain them. Continue to watch them, and when they get plugged, unplug them and take the trees off of them, and
But most of the issue with the Phillips ditch or here lately was in the Jewel Wood subdivision, is that?
that's where the issue came up. That's where it flooded.
That's kind of what triggered a lot of
Okay, I was
this.
gonna say, it's not, unless John knows it, it's not that we heard from farmers on the adjacent land saying, hey, you need to get out
Which
there.
is downstream from these tiles.
That's correct. And that's what I think Dave's gonna kind of talk about is when Jewel was flooded. You know, the first thing the people there did was, one, blame the drainage board because that's our ditch. But two, blame the state because they had just finished building
Bypass.
the new
That-
31. Dave was hired by
Jointly, but it's jointly.
yeah, to kind of study that, to figure out, okay, why did Jewelwood flood? And I think Dave came up with, if I remember right, well, I'm not gonna steal your thunder. Go ahead.
No, that's okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Dave McCormick of McCormick Engineering, 234 North Ironwood Drive. And our involvement on Jewel Woods, on Phillips Ditch did begin, around 2009. In 2010, there was an extreme rainfall event that did cause flooding in Jewel Woods, and some people did think that maybe, the new relocation of US 31 had caused that. So that was somewhat of how we were retained to look at this situation here. And for the most part, though, development along Jewel Woods has been unregulated to some extent because the Jewel Woods, the Phillips Ditch along this particular area, even though there's 10 square miles of developing area going at the US 20 crossing, for the most part, the flooding maps show no flooding at all. But that's somewhat in error. It's more an issue of a lack of reporting than it is a lack of flooding, in my estimation. And so we have this study that was performed. However, ultimately, if we're going to come up with some solutions to resolve problems along there, they'd be regulated by the Department of Natural Resources and such. So our study had to do some parameters that would hopefully come down to being acceptable to the DNR. Well, unfortunately, we don't have any flow data at this point of actual flows along Phillips Ditch. So we're relatively conservative in terms of how we're conforming to the DNR requirements of how the flow is going to be developed along Phillips Ditch. So from our perspective, the more flow data we have for extreme flow events, we don't want a 100-year flood to happen and flood everyone along Phillips Ditch. But if we have a window where maybe we have a 10-year flood, we'll have a lot better data to go back to DNR and say, well, the model is showing this, but what we really need to calibrate the model to show realistic results for what happened during this event that we actually saw, a 10-year event that we saw. And if we can do that, if we can have that, we'll end up saving a lot of money, I believe, in whatever solutions we come up with for what's going on to resolve the flooding along Phillips Ditch. So that's my general perspective. So.
Appreciate it. So just seeing that opportunity that was in line with what we do at the commission in the way of gathering data and studying this thing. So we're gonna keep them in there. We're hopefully gonna capture some bigger flows and at some point, maybe we'll have something to redesign with. Any questions? Any other questions? Appreciate your all's time. Bobby?
This is a different question, not related to what you discussed, and thank you for this. But Matt, the Kankakee Yellow River Basin.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a study on that all the way back? Why the Nesbejani backs up related to the Kankakee?
Wow. So Nesbejani, of course, so I think you understand, like, there's one of them's going south to the Gulf of Mexico, that's Kankakee and Nesbejani, and then Phillips Ditch and Bowman Creek and all that's going to the Great Lakes through the St. Joe. I think, I had to guess, I know your predecessor, John, served as the original chair of that Kankakee River Basin Commission, and then John Law here has gone for many years. As far as I understand, there's been much more extensive study done of the Kankakee than what we've had up here in the St. Joe. So specifically to Neshbajani, I don't know. It's outside of our service area.
That's related to the, the Kankakee backs up at times, right?
Right,
And then everything else backs up.
right.
All the studies on the Kankakee, Bobby, have been commissioned, paid for by the southern Moore County, the Knox, those areas where the Kankakee, when it floods and floods, Smyrna resorts, it floods, US 30 there, just north of 49. So all the studies basically on it have been down south because that's where all the issues are. There has never really been a huge issue on the Kankakee in St. Joe County.
Right.
That has been bad enough to trigger a study on, if that makes sense. Yes, the Nespajani's flooded there at State Road 2 and 20, but that's only happened once during a 10-inch rainfall. So, there's
But
nothing
everything-
there to trigger a study on.
But everything's gonna back up then.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
John, where does the yellow empty into the Kankakee?
Yellow Impy's in a Kankakee 39, DNR has a state wildlife area right there. Basically it's the area is called Old English Lake. And Old English Lake was a resort lake back when shortly after they dredged the Kankakee, it was a resort on a big lake, a lot of fishing, a lot of hunting, a deep lake. That lake is absolutely gone now.
Right.
It has filled in completely with sand. And that's what triggered the biggest study. Well, that's what the study on the Kankakee was. Why is all that sand in English Lake? And that's where they found out, well, a lot of that sand's coming from the Yellow River, south of Plymouth. So that's why the state legislature then put a tax in place to bring in $2 million a year to spend money on the Kankakee to prevent that flooding down south. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there was a big issue there that needed to be solved. They studied it and they figured out a way to solve it. Right now, there's just not an issue on the Nespajani other than, everybody that lives there knows it backs up and then backs up the Nespajani, and the Nespajani doesn't float into the Kankakee until the Kankakee goes low enough that it can go out. But that hasn't been a problem in the past. Everybody lives there knows we got a lot of rain, Kankakee's coming up, Nespajani's not gonna flow until it goes down.
So that's a reason why there's never been a study on the
There's just never been a reason to, because
common sense tells you it's just gonna back up.
common sense tells, everybody there knows, live there, yeah. Like I said, Bailey's 4 generations, he's the John Dutton of the Nespajani, and, they know that's what happens.
Randy, you got a comment?
Well, the Kankakee River Basin Commission, or the new name now, I mean, they've done a lot of work on the Kankakee River. Maybe not dredging, but at least tree removal and let the flow of water flow easier. So I mean, we get heavy rains, it comes up, but I've also noticed that it probably goes down faster.
Well, they always said it was pretty much at the state line, the year, those
Yeah, there was a big,
Illinois stuff
yeah,
years and years ago.
I think it still is today, the Kankakee hits the state line and there's,
Well, that's the entire problem with the Kankakee River is they started dredging at Illinois state line. The reason they started there was because there's a big rock shelf right there called Moments
right.
in
That's
Moments.
in Moment.
And now that's a bedrock rock shelf
And we-
that sets the absolute elevation for the Kankakee. So it can't go any lower there. But then from there, Indiana sends their water to them as fast as possible. So yes, it creates all kinds of problems, and Illinois paid for part of that joint study, things like that. So
Because, years and years ago, we were gonna take that rock
Yeah.
ledge out of there, and you got a response quickly. You wasn't gonna touch one rock in that river.
Oh, yeah. But, yeah, Matt does the same thing. The Kankakee River Commission, there's a study group that kind of studies it, keeps track, kind of organizes things. Matt does the same thing with the St. Joe River. It's just the Kankakee and the St. Joe have completely different problems. So,
And
So Matt.
Yeah.
So what is a study gonna tell us if we were to do the study.
Yeah.
On the Nisqually North, from the what would that tell us that we don't already know?
Right, that I don't know, and I think to your original question, Bobby, the most interesting thing here, because St. Joe County is split, it's got some of it flowing to the Kankakee and some of it goes to St. Joe. I think one thing to think about is the different land uses that you have going on. So why we're here doing this and talking about this is there's this big it's not big, but a good sized residential neighborhood, and then the whole city of South Bend along Bowman Creek. You've got all this development that's occurred that's being flooded. And whereas the part of the county that drains to the Kankakee, where Nisqually is all ag land. And so, farmers on drainage boards are used to this kind of thing. And I think it's when it happens in these residential or developed areas, which we'll have some going forward with what's going on the west side. Understanding how those flows can be mitigated through things like detention and engineered sort of solutions for storing water become important. I don't know the site well enough, like out where the new development is occurring on the west side to know, what kind of, could this new development end up under similar conditions to what Jewel Woods is now? That I don't know. The topography is so much different in Phillips Ditch. We're coming up off of a high area, whereas down there, it's such a big, broad, flat area. Anyway, the point is, the part of the county that we deal with is the developed part of the county. The part of the county that the Kankakee is just now starting to develop. So that's why I think more studies are being done, where these peoples have developed and that kind of thing, if that makes any sense.
Did you have a comment?
Well, just the difference in the two ditches,
Yeah,
Bobby, is the Phillips, part of it's an open ditch, goes into a tile, comes back out to an open ditch. And does that several different places, whereas the Kankakee and the Nisqually are all primarily open ditches. The only place that I'm aware of that they go into a pipe is going under a county road, the railroad,
and the
utility.
topography is just so
But you're
different.
talking, but you mentioned storage, Matt, not to interrupt you.
Yep.
But you mentioned storage. I don't know if you can build a storage area to hold all that backed up water.
Right, that's what, well, and even, so, right. And you're dealing with two totally different shaped lands, like one's pancake flat in a bunch of muck soil. And then up in Phillips, it's got rolling stuff. That's why it goes into tiles to go underneath things and stuff. And I think that's kind of what Dave was saying, like, to the cost of building something to attenuate to what DNR was looking for was gonna be a whole lot of money. And maybe the flows could say, hey, for half that, you could detain half the flows or something.
Just to back up a bit, in 1970s, the DNR came in and they studied Phillips Ditch and the potential of flooding downstream Jewel Woods and South Bend. They did a study back in the 70s and came up with, okay, you're gonna need a retention basin or this big to prevent that, and it was what, $5 million in the 70s. So that's when they're saying we're trying to save the county money. That's kind of what they're looking at is, okay, is there a better way of solving the flooding instead of just digging a big hole up there?
Or
by
buying
Miami?
everybody out in Jewel Woods.
Yeah. So does that make sense? Yeah, that's
It does.
Yeah.
So,
for the, yeah.
John, at that time in 1970s, was the retention basin should have been put in Jewel Wood where they build houses?
Jewel Woods would never be built today.
I don't think Kiki would have liked that at that.
They basically flooded, they basically drained a wetland, rerouted the ditch to build the houses in Jewel Woods. And so you got a ditch like this, Jewel Woods,
Yeah.
and then a ditch like this. So Jewel Woods floods.
Right.
But
But is
Uh,
it possible to engineer our
is
way
there a way to
out of
fix
the
it?
worst parts of it?
Yes. Is there a way to mitigate that? So
Right.
that's kind of what Dave and
Right.
Matt's group are looking at.
One quick comment, as long as you brought up the Kankakee, I think Scott Pilaf, who's the executive director of the commission, would be happy to come and talk to us about the upper end of the Kankakee and the Nisqually, and at least inform us of what they've done. They've done a ton of studies, and they just finished a master plan of the whole basin in team, I think Christopher Burke did it, and they have a lot of projects identified to improve the flow all the way to this, into Illinois. Illinois even has representatives on the commission. So if, maybe to inform ourselves, especially with these discharge permits coming up, we ought to investigate that if you want to.
It would be,
Probably wouldn't hurt, yeah.
I think so.
Good idea.
So what do you guys want, get Scott Peeloff up here to kind of, Scott's the mat of the
Mhm.
Kankakee, so, are you requesting him to come up and kind of explain it a little bit? Is that what I'm hearing?
That'd be my request. I think he'd be happy to do it.
He'd be happy to do it. He's just, 'cause there's never been any big issues up here. So he's just, all he does is, all the southern stuff down Knox and, yeah, that area, so Fish and Wildlife areas. But yeah, no, I can get him up here next, whenever you guys want him to come up and kind of give a brief presentation like Matt just did, on what they're doing there.
Yeah, he's bought some of these, kind of units that we're using to measure Phillips. He's
Oh,
got
yeah.
installed out there
Yeah, he's
and more,
got a
and a
bunch of
lot
these.
more.
Yeah.
Their budget's a little different than ours. Well, I appreciate your support and appreciate what you guys do. So let us know if we can ever be a help. John knows where to find me. I'm up in the 11th floor of this building. So thank you, guys.
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, man.
According to his graphs here, it still looks like the biggest problems at Curtin Road, in my estimation.
For the Phillips,
Yes.
Um,
What? Remember years ago, it was always the bypass caused all this problem.
yep.
You
And
know,
that's
when
what,
you- when
that's
you
what
see-
Dave studied, and I think Dave's overall study said they didn't really cause anything, but they sure didn't help solve any problems.
Okay.
And I know that was a big issue when they were talking to him, that we wanted him to
Yeah.
help eliminate that, and they didn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Priority list.
Comment on them, John?
I put that together real quick. If you guys have any questions or comments, it's something we have to do every year, so this month.
John, did this include that Chain of Lake, any of these include that Chain of Lakes area,
What's that?
that Chain of Lakes area that you and I looked at?
Yeah.
Any of these listed on here? I don't think that's on.
No, none of that's listed on here, but this is just something that we gotta, this is kind of the priority stuff, but it doesn't mean we can't do that kind of stuff too. Keep an eye on it, and you get that cleaned up, get those permits, things like that. But it's,
I thought we were gonna look at that Chain of Lakes area.
yeah, we are.
You want to add that to the list?
We can. Chain of Lakes permit for the outlet.
When something's brought to my attention 6 months ago or 8 months ago, that it's a concern, but it should be on the list and we should be addressing it. And we're trying to address it, but I don't see why it should take 6, 8 months to get things going.
I presume we need a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the priority list as presented with the addition of the Chain of Lakes
I'll second.
issue.
Motion been made and seconded to accept the priority list. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Opposed, motion carried. Privilege of the floor. Okay, I guess we're ready for good.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor?
All right.
Motion carried.
Public hearing.
Yep. Don't we, John, don't we have?
We have public hearing on
Oh, that's right.
Hawthorne Crossing.
This time I'd like to open the public hearing for the Hawthorne Crossing Urban Drain Petition. Not that in our packets here.
Nope.
Nope. Assume it's been advertised and all that, Hawthorne Crossing Urban Drain Petition,
Yeah, we advertised
if it need be.
for that we advertised for that Hawthorne crossing.
I don't know, did,
I mean, I don't know if it
Yeah.
needed to be. but-
I think it does.
Dee said it's been
It did,
advertised,
okay.
just that they don't have a copy of it in their packet.
Oh, as long as it's been done.
Yeah, it's been advertised.
Okay.
Chris, you want to
Yeah,
comment on that?
yep. Chris Godlewski, Aben Marsh, 315 West Jefferson Boulevard, South Bend, Indiana, 46601. Yeah, this is I guess, the public hearing for the petition for Hawthorne Crossing. It's a 27 lot subdivision located on the west side of Ash Road, about a quarter mile north of Douglas. I thought you maybe saw this last month in passing. It's a very large lot subdivision. About an acre is the minimum lot, up to 15 acres on the west side where that low area is. So unless you have any questions for me, I would ask after the hearing, favorable approval.
John and I have looked at that and I think we're good with it, aren't we, John?
yeah, is there anybody here to speak against it? And it looks like Matt's the only one, so no.
Okay, no other additional comments or speakers. We would need a motion to approve it as an urban drain.
Yeah, make the motion to approve it as urban draining.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
We got her done, so.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion, yeah, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. We're officially adjourned.
Thank you.